is the biggest draft weekend of the year. Your drafts are coming up so soon and football is less than a week away. But you need to find some late round targets that you can pick who you think have league winning upside. Well, look no further. In this video, I've got 6 players for you that are available so late in your drafts that I think have a real chance to be fantasy relevant this year. And not just that, but some of them could be sleepers that could win leagues. Let's get into it. The first player that I want to talk about is someone that has been incredibly hyped up this offseason, but with a trade happening on his team, the time is finally there for Jalen Coker to take over and be fantasy relevant. Jalen Coker was a UDFA last season and did a little bit as a rookie, but was being more hyped up due to having some outstanding metrics and analytics. But the crucial thing with Jalen Coker is that Adam Thielen was traded from this team, meaning that Dave Canales has been saying that he's going to be the starting slot receiver going into next season. Now, when you take a look behind the scenes with Jalen Coker, he had fantastic success out of the slot last season. When I took a look at Matt Harmon's reception perception, and the profile for Jalen Coker is available on DLF, Coker had over 80% success on both slants and flat routes and 100% success on screens, although that's obviously a very limited sample size. But when you take a look at his success against press, man and zone, they were all over 70%, particularly succeeding against zone coverage, which was over 78% in what Matt Harmon charted last year. This is an incredibly exciting metric for a UDFA and someone going into their second season. Coker is exactly the sort of profile that we look for, but exactly the sort of profile that we think, I wish he saw more playing time and got more targets, but actually never ends up getting quite that. Now, going into next season, Jalen Coker is going to function likely as the wide receiver 3, but behind Tetero McMillan and Xavier Legette, both first-round picks. McMillan is definitely going to be the wide receiver 1 on this team, but to be honest, when you take a look at Xavier Legette last season, he had quite a disappointing rookie year. Legette is probably more of a movable chess piece and a Y, who is probably better working horizontally from the way that I've seen him play. Coker as a big slot has seen some huge success in the year in the Coker playing out of the slot as that typical proto big slot archetype saw a lot of success last season and is an exciting player going into next year, particularly as we don't really know who the second target leader on this team is going to be, and there are a whole host of vacated targets available from Adam Thielen's departure. That is made all the more exciting by the fact that per Fantasy Pro's real-time ADP, he is currently available as the wide receiver 87. That is so late down the board for a player on an exciting offense with a good quarterback who we think should have a path to being the second target leader on this team. Next up, we have a player going just after Jalen Coker and another player that I'm really excited about. Tory Horton is currently going as the wide receiver 88, and Tory Horton was an exciting prospect coming out of Colorado last year. Horton saw a huge amount of success playing on the boundary, but it was quite difficult to figure out exactly what kind of player he was and whether the success was just due to the level of opposition in front of him. He also struggled with quite poor quarterback play, which is not a surprise given the conference that he was playing in, and obviously that poor level of opposition just makes it really difficult to evaluate whether Horton was a fantastic deep threat or whether it was just a combination of everything around him that made him look a lot better. When it comes to Horton's profile as a player, he is a classic rangy deep threat who can win consistently on the outside. Whether against press coverage, man coverage, he thrived on contested catch situations, but also running a 4.41 40 had a fantastic ability to open up those long strides and win deep down the field. Now, when I wrote him up for DLF before the draft, I named a few landing spots that I thought would be great for him, but the number 1 team that I wanted him to land on was the Seattle Seahawks, and lo and behold, on day 3, that's where he landed. He matches up so perfectly with Sam Darnold's skill set in terms of someone that can win consistently deep down the field and on the boundary. And the weird thing about the Sam Darnold signing was that the weapons that Seattle has in Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp are people that like to win in the short and intermediate games, so they needed someone who could stretch the field vertically. Now, of course, they did bring in Marquez Valdes-Scantling this offseason, but the beautiful thing for Tory Horton is that he was cut, meaning that Horton has a clear path to that wide receiver 3 role. And given the health status of Cooper Kupp over the past few seasons, it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up getting banged up, or if the decline that we saw last year means that actually Horton can overtake wide receiver 2 status. If Horton, going all the way down at wide receiver 88, can end up winning the wide receiver 2 role in this offense, whether it be because of Kupp's decline or an injury, or even if he's still the wide receiver 3, there are going to be some clear spike weeks where he catches deep touchdowns and just deep receptions as well. Horton's value is so fantastic right now, and he's been a player that I've been hyping up all off-season, so seeing MVS get cut was so exciting for me because I have so many dynasty shares of Tory Horton. If you're enjoying this content, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. There's so much more to come as we approach the season actually starting, and I hope you'll be willing to join me on that journey. But let's carry on with the next player, and it's a running back that I'm so excited for this season. If you had said after the 2023 season that Ollie Gordon would end up being a late day 3 pick, people would have called you an absolute idiot. But after a disappointing 2024, that's exactly what happened. But which Ollie Gordon is the NFL actually going to be getting? That's the question. Gordon is currently going as the running back 53, having been drafted to the Miami Dolphins on day 3 of the last draft. And one of the most exciting things about Gordon is the way that his skill set matches up with the other backs in this offense. Where Devon Achane and Jalen Wright are much smaller backs who rely on pace and that quick acceleration to get to the edge, Gordon is a much bigger bodied back. He thrives through contacts, but when I watched him, has a huge amount of smoothness to his game, as well as being able to work in the passing game as well. If you watched Ollie Gordon 2023 tape, it looked like he should have been competing with Ashton Genty to be a first round pick this season. Watching 2024, some of that linear lack of wiggle was a little bit of a problem for him, that stiffness in his hips, but as a downhill runner, there were few backs better in college across the last couple of seasons. Now, one of the really exciting things for him, and obviously less exciting for the other player, is that Jalen Wright has just gone down injured, and it's been reported that he's had to have surgery. There's a little lack of clarity in terms of when he's actually going to be back playing football, but it leaves the opportunity there for Ollie Gordon to become the running back 2 on this team. The best thing is that he provides such a complementary skill set to Devon Achane. As Tyreek Hill even said this offseason when he said, maybe take Achane off the field in goal line situations and put Ollie Gordon out there, and that's exactly what the Dolphins need to be doing if they want to score more in the red zone. Achane himself is someone that has really struggled with health, not having played a full 17-game season in the league so far, and has been struggling with health issues across the entire offseason. Gordon, to me, going this late down the board at RB53 is a gigantic steal. If he can revert back to 2023 Ollie Gordon, he can probably be one of the best running backs in the NFL, but that seems slightly unlikely. But with Achane potentially getting banged up, Gordon is a priority backup that you need to be targeting in your drafts, because all it takes is one injury, and this is a guy who is the lead running back with a huge amount of potential in a scheme which we've seen have a huge amount of success in the NFL. Next up, we have a player I've spoken about a lot this offseason, which is Cedric Tillman Jr, obviously currently playing for the Cleveland Browns. Now, I know what you're saying. Why would you want a single Browns player on your fantasy team? And I completely understand that. But one of the most exciting things you can get is garbage time points. And when a team is bad, they will have to throw the ball a lot. Wide receivers don't have to be in good offenses or winning games to score fantasy points, especially someone this deep down the board. Cedric Tillman is currently going as the wide receiver 62 in drafts, which represents a clear opportunity given that beat reporters have said that he's likely to be the wide receiver 2 on this team and starting on the outside opposite Jerry Jeudy. Now, we know that Joe Flacco is going to start the year, and Joe Flacco has enabled countless receivers over the past few years to be fantasy relevant. Jameis Winston last year propelled Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, and Cedric Tillman himself to some fantastic spike weeks at the position. Before he got injured, Cedric Tillman was a perfectly fantasy relevant player, finishing with multiple games games of over 80 yards, even if those were mostly deep receptions and not from consistent target volume. However, in this offense with Flacco as the starting quarterback, consistent target volume is what he's going to get. The problem for Tillman is likely going to be stuttering from the offense, as well as the fact that we can anticipate a quarterback change coming at some point in this season, whether it be to Dylan Gabriel or to Shedeur Sanders, and isn't that the big question that everyone has in their minds right now? Cedric Tillman Jr. is a wide receiver that I really like watching. I think he's dominant on the outside, but I think he has the athleticism to make splash plays as well. This might be a better and best ball pick, but to me, going in the wide receiver 60s range, Tillman represents some huge value, and there's not a huge amount of players who are the wide receiver 2 on their own team who are available that late down the board. Monongai is currently going as the running back 63 and is again in that tier of backup running backs that you need to be looking towards. Now, I know he was a 7th round pick, but we've been talking about 7th round picks a lot this offseason, particularly talking about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who you'll notice isn't included here because he is not a sleeper anymore. Monongai was drafted to the Bears, which is one of the most exciting situations for a running back to go. Ben Johnson obviously showed an ability to create and devise an explosive running game in Detroit, and now coming to Chicago with that massively improved interior offensive line, it's anticipated that he'll try his best to do the same thing. Ahead of Monongai, we have DeAndre Swift, who Ben Johnson moved on from when he was in Detroit, and Roschon Johnson, who is a relatively limited player, even if he's someone that I quite liked when he was coming out of Texas Tech. But Monongai, when you look at him at Rutgers, he was not a player I was hugely bothered by because of the lack of ability to work in the receiving game. But when you look at him on the ground, he is a powerful back. His contact balance is absolutely fantastic. His eye for the red zone is really impressive. He earned first team All Big Ten honors in 2024, being the first player out of Rutgers to do that at the running back position. And crucially, he never fumbles the ball. The ball security is fantastic from Monongai. He has a lot of the qualities you would really like to look for in a 7th round pick, in terms of being a reliable contributor with a clearly defined role. Now, when you take a look at the Detroit offense and the David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs roles, obviously we don't know for certain it's going to be exactly the same going into the Chicago Bears. But if it is, Monongai is probably the back that profiles the most similarly to David Montgomery. That would leave DeAndre Swift to do the Jahmyr Gibbs role, and we know that he can be an effective and efficient pass catcher out of the backfield, which Monongai absolutely can't be. But if we think this offense is going to improve with Ben Johnson, with Caleb Williams, with the additions of Colston Loveland and Luther Burden, taking a gamble on a late round running back who could have a fair amount of the workload in this offense isn't a bad way to go. If Monongai earns the goal line work in Chicago, that could be incredibly valuable if we think this offense is going to be as good as it can be. And with Monongai going all the way down at running back 63, that is a clear market opportunity for a backup running back who could quite easily end up in a 1A, 1B type situation. We are finishing off back where we started with the Carolina Panthers offense because there's so much market opportunity to be had there. And with the tight end 32, Ja'Tavion Sanders. Ja'Tavion Sanders was the first pick of the 4th round last season, is a relatively limited player, but an exciting receiving tight end. And he had a strong mid-season stretch last season. In between weeks 5 and 9, he finished with 5 or more targets in 4 of those games and as a top 12 tight end in 3 of them. That's incredibly exciting for a rookie tight end who didn't do a huge amount the rest of the season. Now, he did struggle with a neck injury that ruined the down stretch of the season, but coming into training camp looking incredibly lean and much healthier, there's a chance for JT Sanders to be able to show some of that dominant receiving work that made him a success in college. It could take a little bit longer for Sanders to break out, but if you like the Panthers offense and if you want to try and take a gamble on who could be the second target, especially we obviously spoken about Coker already, but if you think Leggette's going to be the second target, his catch rate last season would potentially beg to differ. Sanders is the cheapest way to potentially get the second target leader in this offense. So if you like Bryce Young, if you like Dave Canales, and if you're feeling good about the Panthers going into next season, taking taking a bet on a sophomore player who had 3 finishes inside the top 12 in 5 games in a mid-season stretch isn't a bad way to go. This is probably the one with the lowest floor and is someone I'd consider taking as a tight end 2, definitely not as your tight end 1, but he could end up being a priority waiver wire pickup in week 1 or week 2 if we see that his role on the field is going to be much more pronounced than it was last season.